Claudio Chiappucci, the Italian leader of the Tour de France, hangs on while Eric Breukink, Greg LeMond and Pedro Delgado wait for the chance to deliver the knockout blow. But which one will do it? The Tour de France rolls on. Hello again, and the Tour de France today heads towards its next rendezvous, the Pyrenees, which begin tomorrow with the climb of Lutz Ardiden. We're in Millau this morning, just below the mountain where Marino Laggiretta scored his first ever stage victory in the Tour de France at 33 years of age. A most consistent rider in this race, and at last he's had his just reward. The overall situation, Claudio Chiappucci is still on top, but looking increasingly fragile now. 1 minute and 49 seconds ahead of Eric Breukink. 2 minutes 21 in front of Greg LeMond, 4 minutes 26 ahead of Pedro Delgado. Ronan Pensek slowly slipping away down to 5th at 4 minutes 55, and Gianni Bugno is in 6th place but over 6 minutes behind. Every day in the Tour de France is a competition for the journalists in which they can name, they hope, the first 5 riders to finish in the correct order for which they receive points. And there's a nice prize every day for the man who gets it almost right. Paul Sherwin has won one stage, he's finished 3rd in another. So we thought we'd ask him this morning as to who he might decide for today. Just look at this. He's gone for Sean Kelly. Well, he's a brave man because Sean Kelly hasn't won a stage in the Tour de France since 1982. But Paul feels the terrain today will suit Kelly, and he might manage to springboard away near the end in a small group and win the sprint. He's gone for Dag Otto Lauritsen, another lone escape expert, for 2nd place. And then to play safe, he's put in Johan Museeuw to clean up in the sprint. Now, the stage today is a good one for this sort of breakaway. It starts in Millau. There's one small climb, 2nd category in the middle. But then there's a small hill comes towards the end where a leading group could break away and decide this stage. It's a ride of 170 kilometres.
And we start today with the sad news that after 75 kilometres of today's stage of the Tour de France, Robert Millar has abandoned. He called for the race doctor just before starting the 2nd category climb of the Col de Zee, and news came shortly over the top of that climb that Robert Millar had abandoned the race. Now, that is an absolute surprise. We must assume that Robert Millar has developed some form of sickness during the night, because nobody was aware of any problems at all with the rider from Z. Even yesterday, he was one of the driving forces in a breakaway that escaped near the end. So that is terrible news, because with the Pyrenees starting tomorrow, where we expected Robert Millar to come good and provide us with a stage win, he leaves the Tour de France today. And it all happened on this climb, the climb of the Col de Zee, which is 13 kilometres, a steady climb uphill, and it's where the breakaway of 19 riders who still lead the race at the moment formed. In the breakaway was Eduardo Chozas, the most dangerous man of all of the group. He was 10 minutes down overnight, and the breakaway at one stage was 8 minutes in the lead. And we can look down now at the big peloton under full pressure here, because word has spread that Chozas is in this front group. And now in the last 2 or 3 kilometres, Charlie Motte has broken clear of the lead group. And so Motte is making a dash for the finish, which is approximately 26 kilometres away. Chozas is still working in the chasing group, and the last time check we received was that the group was approximately 7 minutes ahead, and Chozas is still making good inroads into the race lead. He won't take the yellow jersey, of course, but he could come good in the Pyrenees if he keeps this sort of gain up. He's the honours list of Charlie Motte. In his last 3 Tours de France, he was 6th last year. 4th was his best ride in 1987. He's been largely a disappointment this year, but Paul Sherwin alongside me. Now, we're both very disappointed, Paul, about the loss of Robert Millar.
Well, it's been a sad day for British cycling that Robert has actually retired. I'd like to know what happened to him, but it's quite easy in the Tour de France to get a stomach problem or even a drop of bronchitis. Robert seemed to be going so well the last few days. It must have been something like that to have taken him so quickly.
So you can see the panic here in the group behind as they try to sort themselves out to get attacks going all of the time. This is the chase group which Motte has left, and it's splitting up now because there's blocking going on by the RMO riders in this group because of Motte up front, and the Chozas wants to keep it driving because he's climbing the overall classification.
Well, nobody wants to chase us at all, and you can see there's a group of 4, 5 or 6 riders getting away there. Motte going away all the time. He's got 55 seconds lead, and this is not a very good move at all for this breakaway group who've been away for a long time, because now that there's no work going on amongst these riders, it'll help the bunch to come back, which is not very good for Chozas at all.
No, I think he sensed that as well, Paul. They're 19 riders strong. They came together on the climb of the Col de Zee. There was 2 groups went clear, and they formed at the front of the race. And that's the way it's been now since about the 60th kilometre point of the day. Quite a few riders have no wish to chase at all, and while they keep on doing this, the bunch is going to come back, because unusually today, the heads of state, as it were, the Z to the Z team of what was Robert Miller, but of course still is Greg LeMond, the PDM team and the Banesto team of Pedro Delgado, they've all had to combine today and start the chase. So instead of seeing one team chase in the main field, we've been treated to 3 teams driving the field along, because they want to bring back Chozas, who's part of the Spanish Once team.
And one man who did miss out in that split there was Stephen Roach. Not like Stephen to miss a little split like this, because he's normally the kind of rider who's very clever when it comes to a split like this, and he's nearly always in the first part. Jean-Claude Colotti from the RMO squad sat at the back of this group. He won't want to do anything at all to help this group come up to Charlie Motte, because he's one of Motte's teammates. This will be a good move for him, because he's an extremely fast finisher.
Well, Bruno Cornier in the blue Z jersey there, he's a teammate of Greg LeMond. He's the passenger as well. He won't work with this group at all. And just joining up now, the Banesto rider Alonso. He too is along for the ride, because these men are trying to protect the lead of their team leaders, Delgado and Greg LeMond. Colotti's tried a lot to slip away. He's in this group. He was the first man to attack today. He was joined by all of these riders. And now we go back and see the field. You see, it's the PDM team of Sean Kelly who's trying to drive along here and get some action up front. The Chateau Dax team are chasing. This is Gilbert Duclos-Lasalle of Greg LeMond's Z team. So we're seeing the top 5 of the top 4 riders overall, their teammates having to drive at the front of that bunch. Noticeably, though, Paul, the Carrera riders are there of Chiappucci.
Well, they've had a hard time for the last few days, and I think it's now that we're approaching the Pyrenees, the teams of PDM, of Z, and
the Banesto.
And the Banesto, yeah, they're the ones who really want to make sure that nothing happens before we get into the mountains. So they're the teams really who are taking over the work now, and Chiappucci's just holding on to his yellow jersey as each day goes by.
Well, this is the group chasing down, they hope, Charlie Motte, who wants to actually win back a little face in this race, because he came into the race as one of the French favourites, and he's largely disappointed. So there's the group. Ahead of this group by just over half a minute is Charlie Motte. The man with most to gain today is Eduardo Chozas in this lead group, approximately 7 minutes ahead of the main field. The sad news, though, is that Robert Miller from Scotland has abandoned the Tour de France today. We'll take a short break.
Point for a stage of the Tour de France means 15 minutes of fame for 2 French towns every day. This is Le Puy-en-Velay, which may never see so many journalists in one place again. It seems determined to make the most of it. Some towns on the Tour route will do anything to call attention to themselves, including dressing residents up in medieval costume to promote the particular attractions of the area. That usually translates as food, and every region has its own specialities. Along with the usual cheeses and wines, Le Puys were a green lentil, which didn't go down too well, and an even greener aperitif. The problem is that the Tour masses have seen it and eaten it all before, very possibly on the previous day, and each local chamber of commerce must try to outdo their counterparts in the last town. Hence the appearance of the cannon, and in Le Puy, some local mood music. Eleanor McCartney's precise connections with Le Puy, not even the man in the tourism hat could explain, as they once stopped off for some lentils on a French tour. Whatever the explanation, it kept the invading Tour de France army amused for half an hour, and that can only be good for business. The City Fathers here hope that even if people forget the name of today's stage winner, they'll remember the local vintage. The Tour entourage, meanwhile, is looking forward to Thursday's stage, which finishes in Bordeaux. Back to Phil and the action.
Well, thank you, Gary, and there is plenty of action here today because the leading group of 19 has fragmented all over the roads of France here, and we're still watching Charles Motte hang on. Incredibly, Charles Motte, in his seventh Tour de France, has never won a stage in this race, and he's had a sparkling career as well, and he is now hanging on to a lead of just over 1 minute over these four riders. This is Edwig van Hooijdonk sitting at the back, and also here is Calcaterra, Yekimov from the Panasonic team, and Bruno Cornier from the Z team. They've got together. The attack in the chase was first of all by Cornier, the small rider at the front now. Then he was joined by Calcaterra from Chateau d'Ax. Then up came these two at the back, and they're riding at just over 1 minute behind Motte. The rest of the breakaway is approximately 1 minute 40, which includes Eduardo Chozas, who's still on for a high finish tonight that would give him a good place in the overall classification. And it's 6 minutes now back to the main field, which is still driving along and trying to bring back all of this group. Mainly they want to catch Chozas. Once they put him back in the peloton, the pace might drop a little bit, because Charles Motte today over 30 minutes behind, and he's no longer a threat to Delgado, Breking, Delgado, Chiappucci at the head of the overall classification. Now these are the four chasers, and Yekimov, the super amateur, won 3 World Pursuit titles and an Olympic gold medal in the team pursuit as well. He doesn't seem to have the speed in his legs today, though. In the chase, Motte is very much fired up now to try and save face. He believed he could win the Tour de France, but this, I'm afraid, has been a reality to him this year. He failed miserably in the Alps, and he lives at Solange, which is just below the Alps, of course, in the shadow of Mont Blanc itself, and he was unable to really show his true form there, and so now he seems to settle for a stage win if he can get it.
Well, that must have been a big blow to his morale, actually, the way he did ride in the Alps. I think probably he's been inspired a little bit by the way his teammate there, Thierry Claverola, has ridden in this Tour de France. At the front of this group now, this is the group with Chozas, and you can see none of the riders in this group are willing to help Chozas at all, because he's the rider who's got so much to gain by staying away from the peloton, and he doesn't look like he's going to get much help from his colleagues there.
Nice crowd waiting to see him over the top of the small climb before we drop down back towards Revel. Second this year in the Tour of Italy, but everybody remembers what Moreno Argentin said after he won a stage in the opening week of the Tour de France. He said the Tour of Italy was like kindergarten to the university of the Tour de France. There's that much difference in the race. So the pressure always on the cyclists in the Tour de France to succeed, and Motte, wearing the magic number of the Tour de France, 51, it's won the Tour de France more times than any other number. The other number that lies in second place, by the way, is number 11. That was the number that Stephen Roche wore when he won the Tour de France back in '87. But Eddie Merckx, Bernard Thévenet, Louis Ocaña have all worn the 51 when they have won the Tour de France in the past. That's why Motte thought it was his year, because you don't choose your number, it's what you're given by the order of team. And Motte thought it must be his chance this year because he's been given number 51. Well, he's attacking this climb. He's trying to keep a big gear turning. It makes the legs ache, but if you've got the strength to roll a heavy gear like that, you go much quicker.
You can almost see the difference between the way, as we saw there, Van Hooijdonk tries to jump away. Straight away, Ekimov responds to try and get to his wheel, and there's Calcaterra and Cornier taking up 4th place. They don't want anybody to slip away. But this is all to advantage Charlie Motte in the front there, because he's attacking all the time. This chasing group now seems to have lost a little bit of its momentum, and Motte soon will be plummeting down into the town of Revel on towards his first stage victory.
Well, Van Hooijdonk saw that that wasn't worth pursuing. The three riders with him were a little bit too vigilant. Now they're leaving out there to Fry. But halfway down the slopes, Charlie Motte, this is the descent which people have said is quite a dangerous one. But Motte on his own will get the best sights. It's very similar just here to the Grand Prix de Nation time trial, which Motte has won 3 times down in Cannes in the south of France. And the riders running off there, the Alpes Maritimes hills, and they are twisty just like this. So he's free as a bird now, and all being well, he's going to come home to his first stage victory.
Well, Motte using all the road here, and not a bad descender either. You see how he swings over to the right and cuts the corner. It's very difficult for a rider to know what the bend is going to be like, especially as you've not seen the course beforehand. But Motte uses all the road there, gets out of the corner, and then starts to sprint to take his speed back up again. Luc Leblanc here has just come from behind to reintegrate himself into the front group there. He must have come across on the climb. Not a bad ride by this rider from the Castorama Rally team.
So there's 5 chasers, but they're looking for second place now because the impetus has gone. They're making Van Hooijdonk do all of the pace, and nobody seems very interested. So it wouldn't surprise me if, in fact, Chozas doesn't come up here shortly, because he'll climb it quite well, that small hill.
It looks as if that's Thierry Claverola just going through the 5 kilometre to go sign with Cosvalzol as well, so they may well get on to this group of 5 just before the finish line.
2 kilometres to the finish for Charlie Motte. Through the corridor of trees, which might interfere with our picture a little bit, because trees are a nightmare to our helicopter links down to the motorcycles there. This is the regroupment behind. They now are 7 chasers. No further news from the course to say where Chozas is, I'm afraid, nor indeed where the peloton are, but we can rest assured they'll be closing in, because all of the teams, we haven't had any opportunity to see the main field chase, but the chasing teams are certainly PDM, Benesso, Zed and Chateau Dax. And there's an attack on the far side of the road again, and this is Volkswagen going straight away. Calcaterra follows him quickly. There's a reaction from the rest of the group. Ekimov just hanging on the back there. We're back with the leader.
Well, Motte looking very good here. Look at the size of the gear he's using. He's just pumping that gear around, not using too much of his body. That's the way the body sways there, but that's so he can get a little bit more force into the pedal revs there. It's not the swaying of a tired man. That's the swaying of a really strong man getting everything out of himself.
And the attack of Volkswagen has been neutralized. Motte just making sure now how much time he's got. He's not interested in gaining time today. He just wants the victory.
Well, that's one of the first times that Charlie Motte actually looked behind to see what the situation was. All he was worried about before then was getting as much time between him and the chasing group. That little look over his shoulder was just to make sure that he wasn't going to get caught by a surprise return of those chasing groups in the last 400 or 500 metres.
Now he's going to enjoy this, Paul. The first victory ever. Up goes the zip on the racing jersey. The peak of his cap is turned up. He's just making sure there's nobody else. And now he's going to really enjoy his first ever stage victory in the Tour de France. He's lost his chance as an overall contender, but they're not going to catch him today in Revel. Charlie Motte of France. And there aren't many Frenchmen who's won a stage in the Tour de France this year. The cars are all turned off. And any second now, Motte is going to give us the two-handed salute. 150 metres from the line. The straightening of the jersey and the applause. 4 hours, 13 minutes today. Charlie Motte chose his moment well. It was a long, long breakaway with the 19 riders before he was able to go on his own 30 kilometres from the end. And the RMO team have got a victory. It's Luc Leblanc in second place. Volkswagen is third. Ekimov is in fourth place. Van Hooijdonk having to lead it out. He's not a great sprinter, but he'll give them a good run for his money. And Luc Leblanc is holding as long as he can in second place before he comes out to take the sprint on. And Van Hooijdonk is giving a good run for his money. A good sprint by Edwin Van Hooijdonk. But look at this, Claverola coming clear. This man is having a great Tour de France. Ekimov going with him too on the right. It's between Ekimov and Claverola. It looks like Ekimov might just take it. Ooh, and right on the line, I think Calcaterra may have pinched him. And this is Eduardo Chozas on the right of our picture. Position unimportant, but the importance is the time gained today over the main field. As they come up to the line, it's Jean-Claude Colotti who takes the sprint there. 2 minutes 29 behind the lead. And here's the field swinging in. The yellow jersey of Claudio Chiappucci is here. He'll have a nice surprise on the finishing line today. His mother has been brought to the line by Italian television, and they certainly closed down the gap. It's the sprinters from the Lotto team trying to lead Johan Musier up for the sprint finish for a few points. No sign of the green jersey here of Olaf Ludwig. So Musier should bring home this field. And the gap has closed down significantly to prevent Chozas from climbing too far up the overall classification. They are, in fact, as Musier takes the sprint, at just about 2 minutes and 20 seconds the gain today of Eduardo Chozas, which will probably take him up to around 8th overall.
So let's begin, as usual, with the stage result. A win for the Frenchman Charlie Motte, his first ever stage win, coming in just over 2 minutes ahead of Calcaterra. In third place was Yekimov of the Soviet Union, riding, of course, for the Panasonic team. Fourth was Edwig van Hooijdonk, and fifth was Thierry Claverola. There's no doubt, though, about the sad tale for us back home. It's the retirement today of Robert Miller. Paul Sherwin had the unenviable task of going to the ambulance that came in with the last riders of the race.
Well, Robert, not a nice way to end the Tour de France. Can you tell us what happened to you?
Yeah, this morning when I woke up, I felt pretty sick. Had diarrhea, and then when I started the race, things got worse during the race. I started being sick during the stage, and as soon as we were on uphill, I got dropped straight away.
Did you think it's something that you ate, or the heat, or?
Yeah, something I ate or maybe drank yesterday after the stage, or maybe at the end of the stage. The way things went. Like normally when you're sick during the night, but I was sick during the day. Yeah. So I couldn't get through the stage then.
Must be a disappointment to you as the race goes into the Pyrenees.
Yeah, I was here to help Greg. Normally my job started tomorrow again, so I'm pretty disappointed for the guys that I couldn't finish today.
You never know, do you, in the Tour de France, just when you're going well and just when you're out of the race. You know, Greg LeMond is going to miss Robert Miller tomorrow. Remember on the slopes of Alpe d'Huez when Miller paced Pensec to keep him in yellow? I'm sure that tomorrow Robert Miller would have played a big part in the attack by Greg LeMond. We're off to the Pyrenees, of course, and it wasn't all sadness on the Tour de France. Today it was a very happy occasion for the Italian leader, Claudio Chiappucci. His mother came to visit him, and he didn't know till he arrived at the finish tribune in a fresh yellow jersey. Happy days then for Italy. Will he still be in the lead tomorrow? Let's have a look now at the overall classification. No change in the top 6 names overall. They're all lining up now for the big showdown in the Pyrenees. Eduardo Chozas, who escaped today, he climbed up to 8th overall in the classification. Tomorrow then, the route of the Tour de France will resume without Robert Miller. But it'll be a great race, and we hope you will be with us tomorrow night at our time of 6:30. Remember to keep up with all of the results on page 465 on Fortel. But for the moment from France, we leave you with these rather sad pictures today of the bicycle ridden by number 7 that won't be on the road of the Tour de France tomorrow. From Gary, Paul and myself, goodbye.